Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine. Today I'm with Paul Soden, who's the owner and proprietor of Cafe Rene and four other pubs, well-known businessman throughout Gloucester. Paul, thanks for joining Punchline Talks today. Really great to see you again, mate.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm quite flattered to be with the others that you have interviewed.
Well, I've known you for a little while, and I've only ever seen you behind the bar, mate. And every time we've met, we've had a few drinks. It's always been a great laugh. And you're a business person, if you don't mind me saying. I've admired for quite some time. To be in the game that you're in, to be in the game for so long, it's truly remarkable. And the way that you've grown your company as well. And Cafe Rene and the pubs you run have got a really great reputation. So thanks for joining me. And I'd just like to start really. What is the business as it stands at the moment?
You mean at this moment in time, shut down today?
Well, it's five pubs, isn't it? You run. So what's the other five ones?
No, what's difficult about the question is, are we talking about as I sit here today in Cafe Rene, surrounded by the benches from outside and it being empty and them cleaning the lines and just mothballing the pub again? Or how was the business before the pandemic ever started? Or how was it during the 10 p.m. curfew? Or how was it when there wasn't a 10 p.m. curfew? There were so many questions in there, and I'm sorry to come back at you like that, but I need to know which particular point you want to know where I am.
Well, let's talk about where you actually are now. You've got the benches all around you. It must be quite heartbreaking to go through what you're going through. So what about that?
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. That summed it up perfectly. Yeah, it is.
How the hell do you deal with that with your staff? How the hell do you keep them motivated?
What's amazing is we're a family, not just in Rene, but the other pubs. We're all family, and that's how we deal with everything. And on Wednesday, we got together and we had a illegal group hug, and we said, "Come on, we're going to do this." And we've survived so far, and we're going to be here no matter what it takes, and that's what we're going to do.
So, which five pubs have you got? Can you name them for us, and how long have you been running them?
The Cafe Rene, I came here 18 years ago to a derelict shutdown pub, and then during the 2008 recession, I like buying buildings in recessions. We took on the Tiger's Eye, which is known as the Old Bell, and we've had that for 12 years. And roughly the same time, I took on the Coach and Horses in Kingsholm. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I took on the Fountain in Westgate Street. And then the Imperial as during the lockdown, I took on the Imperial in Northgate Street.
Okay, I didn't realise you took on the Imperial. You're not fancy going across the road and getting the Dick Wick when you were there as well?
Well, no, because I have to really like a pub. It's strange. They're all different, all the pubs. They're all listed buildings. They were all shut when I bought them. They were all businesses that had problems for years, some of them. And I have to walk into a building and feel something. It's a very strange thing to explain because it's not a business concept, but it has to feel something. And so, each of them are completely different pubs, and their trading is completely different as well. What their businesses were completely different. But no, I enjoyed the Imperial because everybody said, "You're absolutely mad, Paul." And I said, "Well, you've known that for years, so what difference does it make? Let's go for it." So,
well, I think you've got to be mad in your trade. So let's talk about Cafe Rene. So you bought that 18 years ago and it turned up and it was completely derelict. What did you do then? What was your starting point?
I went around Gloucester and looked at everything and decided that basically it should be a food-led pub. It needed some live music, and basically every pub is about its staff. It's about how the staff come across in the hospitality industry, and they've got to be natural. All the staff that I employed is natural. They actually like their job. They like people. They like the hospitality industry. They want us to be back open. They don't want to be closed. When I asked which ones wanted to come back after the first lockdown, they all wanted to, you see. So, it's a trade that we all love and enjoy. It's a people business, as you know. And if you like the people business, you like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. So they've kept me going, and I've kept them going, and we just can't wait to reopen.
So the secret to your success must be the food as well, and how about you? How do you go up costing things nowadays, and what have you done now with all the food that's been left over?
Well, we knew it was happening this time, whereas the last time round it was a bit of a disaster. When we were closed on that Friday, the 20th or whatever date it was of March, but that was a nightmare. The amount of food we had in Cafe Rene. And I suppose we saw it coming, but we all prayed it wouldn't actually happen that way, and we'd be given a bit of time. But anyway, this time around, we've been given some warning. So, we ran our stocks down as best we could, much better than last time. The kitchen worked ceaselessly at making sure we actually went out and bought things on a daily basis at the local greengrocers in the market and things like that, because I said, look, we've got to end up with next to nothing. We've still got beer in lines and things left over and park kegs, and it's just impossible to put on the products to serve people and have no stock at the end. You've got to get left with something. So yes, we've had to stick some things in the freezer, which you don't normally do. And there's been some lettuce and veg, which I and the staff have shared and things like that. And we've got some cake that we're still eating as we clear up today.
So what about the beer? Did you have to pour a whole load of beer down the drain the first time round? And
how
much does it cost you, the whole shebang so far since lockdown? Any idea?
Across the board or just in Café Rene?
Well, across the board.
Oh, I'm going to have to say I'm going to defer on that, but in Rene, 40,000.
Right. Okay.
Maybe a touch more. The problem is that, when you've got a really big business like Café Rene was, we were turning over 30,000 a week, which for a pub in Gloucester is unknown of. I mean, I know Witherspoons do that, but we live music, late night. We were everything food. It was a massive pub. All our festivals on the green, the Blues, we spent 17 years building, the Renegade Festival, 10 years, the Notting Hill, everything just woof like that. It completely transformed us, and we become a food pub. That's what we now are. And it's very difficult to see how when we reopen, we can be anything else other than a food pub. So we're concentrating very much on the food.
So Café Rene has always been that sort of success story that you built up. What about the other pubs? Have they been more problematic? Tiger's Eye, you got to go up the stairs, and you did Chinese food for a bit, and steaks, and on a plate, on a sizzling plate thing, and you got what's the difference between all of them, and how did you make them work? Coach and Horses cider thing, wasn't it? You tried.
Yes, well, we still make cider down the Coach and Horses. We just don't advertise it. It's just we sell it in the Coach. We make it for the Coach. We sell some in Rene, and we love making it. It's real fun. We're getting there with the apples. All the staff come in. It's back-breaking few days. There's apples everywhere. It's messy, but it's the best laugh we have. I mean, we wanted to make it this year. It's teamwork. I set it all up. I was on a brewer by trade, so I kind of put this whole thing into cider, and that was part of where everybody got involved. The Tiger's Eye, well, I used to go in there and have a drink, and it kept sort of opening and shutting. And I couldn't really figure it out other than you said the stairs. And I'm passionate about food. And at the time, we didn't open it as Chinese. It was an Oriental sushi.
Sorry.
And it should have, but it doesn't matter. It should have worked. But actually, I did it because of the building, the fireplace alone. I mean, as I said, I'm into buildings and I'm into food. You look up that fireplace in the Tiger's Eye on the first floor of the Old Bell, the history of it, how the hotel was next door and was knocked down to build Eastgate Shopping. And the history involved in that building is phenomenal, even starting some religious movements in America. The fountain, I couldn't understand why it kept opening and shutting. And we've made that work purely on food. And the fact that Helen is an amazing manageress and my equal and probably more. And that's been done on real service, real food, real quality. And again, its history at the fountain is incredible. And the Coach and Horses was a coaching inn, and underneath the garden are all the posts and poles. And it's said, but there's so much history to each of the pubs, and they're all very different. The Coach doesn't serve food at all, apart from rugby days when we used to serve pork rolls, but we don't have rugby days anymore, so don't sell pork rolls.
So let's talk about you then, Paul. Are you Gloucester born and bred, or where did you come from originally?
Oh God!
How old are you anyway, mate?
62.
Wow, looking good. But then you are very blurry.
Very well, blurry. I feel blurry. We've been trying to drink the stock, you see. That's 2 nights in a row. It's hard work with just you and a mate. When you've only got one buddy you're allowed in your bubble, then you have to choose him. If he's not a good drinking partner, then you've got to do the drinking.
I can imagine that. So you're 62 years old. Where were you born? Where are you from?
Oh, I was born in Berlin.
In Berlin, were you?
Yeah.
All right,
my father was in the Foreign Office, so he dragged me all around the world for 18 years to various places, and ended up in China when I was 8 during the Cultural Revolution. And then my mum and dad decided they couldn't try and educate me all around the world anymore, and threw me into a private school in the middle of the countryside, in the middle of Buckinghamshire.
Good stuff. And so how did your journey go? Have you always been in the hospitality trade? So you left school. What then?
Yeah, I left school, went to Manchester University and did economics and politics. But I ended up joining the officer training corps and ended up running the bar in the officer training corps, and also the refectory bar and my hall bar. And that's because my parents bought a pub, and between school and university, I worked in the pub. So I was the only one who could help my parents open the pub that they bought. So my dad was sick of the Foreign Office. So my brother had worked in a restaurant, I worked in the pub. We helped them open the pub for 2 weeks. My brother went to university and I did. And we worked the pub every holiday for the entire university.
All right, okay. So what happened then?
I left university, worked in the kitchen for a while because it was a family business, but then got thoroughly bored. And I said to my dad one day, because I was a home brewer for years when I was about 16 onwards, and I said to my dad one day, I'm going to put a brewery in that shed. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, I'm going to open a brewery in the shed. And he was like, but nobody's doing that. And I said, no, that's why I'm going to do it, Dad. And so I opened one of the first independent small breweries in the country.
What was it called?
It was called Anchor Inn Brewery in Anchor Inn in Upton upon Severn. And it was in the asbestos sheds out the back, which I individually scrubbed, not knowing they were asbestos, until a builder came to see me one day and he said, you need to be wearing some masks. And I said, why? Because that's what that is. And I'm like, thanks, mate.
Right.
Yeah, so I built this brewery, and it was a pile of you know what. And then a couple of people came to see me who were brewers, and they kind of edged me on my way to edge between what I called my little home brewery kit and being a bit more commercial and get rid of some plastic containers and try and get some stainless ones and so on. So yeah, I built that all up, and it was lovely. It was great fun. It's really good fun.
How big did it get before you know? And
it was just me, one-man band, me and a van. I did all the brewing, all the selling, all of everything. I didn't employ anybody. And in my spare time, I worked in the kitchen.
Wow. Okay. Really good education. So what age did you stop doing that, and where did you go next?
Well, Mum and Dad sold the pub, which my brother and I were very happy about. We wanted to sort of buy it or lease it from them. So then it's so complicated, but looking back, mad. I managed to borrow some money and do a deal here and get somebody else on board, and bought a derelict pub in Worcester in Lowersmoor, and then turned it into one of the most successful brew pubs in Worcester.
Wow. Okay. And how old were you then? And why was it so successful?
Because the brewery was right next to the bar, and nobody had done that then. David Bruce came along a bit later, but basically I was sort of one of the first people to come up with the brew pub, so you could actually be at the bar, and the brewery was right next door behind leaded light windows.
Right. Okay.
It was novel, really novel at the time. The whole thing was stone flag floor, wooden barrels. It was famous at the time. It was a Jolly Roger brewery, Jolly Roger ales, rebrewed Winter Wobbler, one of the strongest beers in the country. We were all fighting to make small brewers have a chance to survive then, and I was given or handed the task of being chairman of the Small Independent Brewers Association, because basically no one else wanted to do it. And 6 of us sat around the table, and I stupidly said, I'll be Spartacus, which sidetracked my business for 7.5 years being chairman of SEBA. But I built it from a nothing organization into a well-respected organization, met members of parliament and also ministers, and went to Brussels. And I fought really hard to get what was the sliding scale of duty, which transformed the whole brewing industry from having 20 or 30 small brewers to something like 1,500 now. And we did that on the basis that the Europeans had a sliding scale of duty, and therefore it wasn't a level playing field. And it took years to persuade government and customs excise and everybody that it would work and employ people. And indeed, it's been a revolution beyond all revolutions, from where we were when Canberra were campaigning to get real ale back at all. Now that you've got real ale absolutely everywhere. I don't know how many real ales there are now, 5,000, 10,000 possibly. It's one of the biggest revolutions to look back and be proud of, that I was at the centre of it, along with a lot of other people who put in hours and hours unpaid.
How old were you when you did that?
I was chairman from 1985 to 1992 or 93. And I can't even tell you how old I was then. I don't know. Life seems to have flown by, doesn't it? I thought 30s, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, about that, 30s, yeah.
So going back to where you were in Worcester, then how did you get over to Gloucester, and how did you find Cafe Rene? So there's a bit of a gap there.
Well, yeah, no, that's a lot of questions in one. To be truthful, in 1992, we joined the exchange rate mechanism, and I had the same type of business I got now, which looking back was a lot bigger, but it was a £3.5 million turnover. I had 6 pubs, a big brewery. I was over borrowed looking back, which I'd have got away with had we not ended up in that interest rates going up, and me ended up paying all my properties for freehold. And I ended up paying more money in interest than I was even touching the capital. So the capital was growing, and it became very complicated. And in the end, I called in all the banks and got all the advisors around me. And we sat down and did a deal whereby we tried to get through the next 3 years. And in the end, I threw the towel in. I basically said to them, well, I just don't see how you put this business back together. We've had to cut this, that, and the other, and so on. And so I walked away with the agreement of the banks. It was all very peacefully done and everything, but it was a bloody mess. Horrible period, and a massive learning curve, which in a way has worked out well when I'm dealing with what I'm dealing with now. That experience I never thought I would need again. And I set myself up this time around to not be borrowed.
Which is that the biggest thing that you took out of all that? Not to borrow so much. What was the biggest learning curve?
Yeah, not to be over borrowed, because anything could happen. And as I say, that horrible interest rate mechanism where I was paying 18% and 4% over base of 15% and 12%, it was a massive trap on a declining market with all sorts of other repercussions from that ERM period. And yeah, you just can't get out of that level of borrowing that quickly. And then you try to sell in a down market and you're stuck. So this time around, I'm not over borrowed. I do have some borrowings because I have the freehold property of Café Rene, and in order to do that, I've had to borrow some money from the bank, but I am way under borrowed. Well, I was compared to my ratio of turnover to borrowing. Yeah. But
so when you left there, then that must have been horrendous. You built that business up and you handed back the keys.
Yeah.
How did you do all that emotionally? Did you just say, okay, that's it, I'm going to do it now? Because that's tough.
It was the emotional bit was the worst. That was the most painful. I wouldn't say I was a big man, but I was a biggish man in a small pond. The MP, Peter Luff, was my friend. I was chairman of SEBA. There were a lot of things that I agonized about for a year. Really took it out of me. And then I thought, well, you got to get back into life one way or the other, because it's over. Just get over it. And that's it. I just drew a line under it and went, you are who you are. Just get back on the wagon, which I did.
And how did you find Café Rene? Did you just hear about it, or did you, look through Commercial Property or Pub Weekly or whatever it is?
Well, it's funny. I was sitting at home. I was trying to be a builder and working with a builder, and I wasn't a builder, but we worked together and we built up this little business. But he was a lovely guy, but he didn't want to be in business. And my mother died, and I thought my mother would be appalled. She never wanted me to be a publican, licensee, restaurateur, whatever. She was disappointed, surgeon and all the rest, stockbroker, whatever, but not doing what I'm doing. And I was sat at home reading the paper thinking I ought to do something else. And it said, for sale, Brewery Tap and Brewery Worcester. And that was my old pub that I built up to taking 10 grand a week, like 30 years ago, or 20 odd years ago. So I picked up the phone, and he said, oh, we've just got rid of it today. I said, no, I'll bid you. He said, no. He said, it's gone. He said, do I know you? And I said, I think so. He said, oh, my name's such and such. And I knew him from Banks's Brewery from when I was chairman of SEBA. An hour later, he phoned me back. He said, we've got a problem in Gloucester. Would you like to have a look at it for us? And I said, yes. So I came down here and I basically looked at the pub and I said to him, I love it. I'll take it. And he said, we just wanted somebody to run it temporarily. I said, no, that's not my plan at all. I said, I'll take it. And he said, but yeah, I said, I'll take it. I walked in here and looked at it all and went, why doesn't this work? This is just beautiful. Give me, this is what I'm born to do. This is the pub. And that was it. It was a really weird story.
Did you put all the bottles?
No.
It
turns out a brewing friend of mine called Colin O'Rourke, who used to run the little pub company with all sorts of pubs in the past, had done it. And the chef that designed the kitchen was the guy I bought his nightclub off in Worcester. So all of it was pretty bizarre, but I didn't know. I just cleaned them all up. The place had leaking roofs. Nothing worked. It was just bizarre how it had been run and left and everything. But no, I didn't at all. And that's one of the reasons why I said to the guy, I'll take it. To me, I couldn't understand why it wouldn't work.
And then what was the magic then? How did you get it to work? Because there must be pubs all over the country that aren't working. So how did you do that for?
You have to enjoy what you do, as I said to you earlier. And so myself and Jackie, my partner at the time, were both, when we had a home, our door was always open. So all we did was make our front room from home into this as a front room and built it. And the next key is the staff that you employ. So as soon as we got busy, it's important that I ran the kitchen at the time and Jackie ran the bar. I found somebody to come in and carry on the kitchen because I'm passionate about food and it has to be done my way. And a lot of chefs don't like working for me, and I can understand that. But it's basically just making it your front room. And then when your staff come on, them as well. And then we became, as I said, like a family, and we still are a team. Chris has been with me 17 and a half years, my manager. Kate's 16 and a half years. And the rest of them 15, 12, 13, and on it goes. I have very few staff that have been with me a very short time.
I mean, that must be very hard then during lockdown. Have you had to furlough some of the guys last time, and are you furloughing them this time, or is the plan to keep?
Well, we have no choice. We have no choice last time either. We have to furlough them all. There is no alternative. We can't do any business.
Right.
What business can we do? We can't do anything.
Well, some people are trying to sell beer off the door. They're going to.
We looked at all of that last time round, and I'm a brewer by trade and so on. And we've set up a barrel. We looked at all it. Economically, it doesn't work. I think what it does do is keep your name around the place. So I know some people who carried on doing service and food. I think if you're set up to be a takeaway, then fine. But if you try to reorganize your whole business and buy takeaway containers and set it all up again, then that doesn't work. You're adding to your weekly losses, which are your gas and your electric, and your mortgage is still running, and your rents are still being demanded by these pub companies, although they have started to see some sense and reduce the amount, and some have and some haven't, and so on. But costs still run during this lockdown, but we have no choice but to shut down.
So what do you think about the whole way that the government has managed the crisis itself as a businessman, as an entrepreneur yourself? I mean, it is difficult. It's extremely difficult. I wouldn't like to be in Boris's shoes, but what's your opinion on the furlough and everything that's kind of going on?
I agree with you. The first thing I thought when this all happened is I'd hate to be Boris. So I put that there. On the other hand, if you are the Prime Minister and the leader and you put yourself in that position, then there comes a time where you have to actually be that man. As Truman said when he launched the bomb, the buck stops here. It was on his desk. The first time shut down, no warning, I think a bit silly. The furlough, brilliant, I think. I've heard lots of comments about it, but I don't think people would have survived without it. So I have to take hats off to furlough, and being continued now, brilliant, because otherwise I see 3 million people unemployed in the hospitality business. As for this shutdown, I have a very strong opinion, which I probably should not express. I don't think there should have been a second shutdown, because I now believe that the cure is worse than the disease. And from a business point of view, not just pubs, but I have an economics degree, I really fear for the worst, and I'm an optimist. So I think the first lockdown was pretty severe. The knock-on effects of this, and whether we do get to reopen or not on the 2nd of December, we don't know. Again, uncertainty. The knock-on effects of this economically, to me, I studied the Great Depression. I said, I think a lot of people have got it slightly wrong, just how difficult this is going to be to bounce back from. It's not a V, it's a runaway, or it's a K. But I don't know what sort of recovery curve it is. But when you smash up lines of supply and demand and you create these problems, not just once, but twice, and possibly a third time, the repercussions will take some time to come out in the wash. And I'm positive and optimistic that we'll all keep going, because we are, at the end of the day, survivors. But yeah, I don't think it was necessary either. From what, there's two different opinions, and there's only one being expressed by Sage, and the government's listening to Sage. And I believe there is another opinion. I believe the Great Barrington Declaration is one. I believe that people who worked with the scientists have other opinions and we're not hearing them. And that concerns me, as we live in a democracy.
Do you think perhaps that Boris having the disease himself might have some way, made it that, he's more affected by it? Not, I was going to say frightened, but that's not the right word, but maybe more protective of the population rather than the economic impact.
I'm sure if it happened to me, it'd be a massive shock. Again, as I say, you put yourself in that position to be a leader, his advisors around him. I'm merely suggesting.
Sorry.
That I'm merely suggesting that there are other opinions out there from a great variety of people that have not been considered or discussed, as if there's something wrong with saying that there should not be a second wave because the Gumpert's curve tells us this. And that may be wrong, Paul. I'm sorry if I turn out to be wrong. I'll go to the cross, which is 200 yards away, and I'll unreservedly say I'm awfully sorry that I said this. But I want to see and hope there isn't a second wave. I believe this would be incredibly dangerous and vile disease for the people that it afflicts, and for which I'm awfully sorry, I really am. But the cost that we've got to now, and the number of people who are not getting treatments for other problems and ailments that they have, the empty appointments, the rest of what's going on, the psychological damage, the mental damage. I mean, even I, a very strong person, I think on Wednesday we shut down, shed a little tear. A few of the staff did. There are limits to us, and we just got back on our feet. We were up there. We were fighting back. We were losing money, as a matter of fact, in Café Rene and in the Bell, and it was difficult. But at least we were open and fighting. We were in there, and we were trying to split hours up. And would you take less hours? And could we have one chef? We were playing every game there was to be then told there's no more game to play. The ball's gone, and then. We've got to try and re-gear for Christmas without the bookings that we know we'll have. And it's very difficult to be sure that we'll reopen on the 2nd of December, whether we tiered opening or whatever. So
I do agree with you. Funny enough, I had a little bit of a wobble here on Monday. I mean, I've had a knee operation and I'm not been 100%, but the overall, oh my goodness, here we go again. And it just felt this sudden pressure. And I know lots and lots of us have felt the same, because I worry about, obviously, my family, I worry about my friends, I worry about my mum, I worry about my business, I worry about my health. I've had a heart attack before, you've been poorly before, we've talked about it. And just this overriding pressure came over to me. And luckily for me, I picked up a phone, I phoned one of my really good mates. And you know what, in 15 minutes, he was here outside my door, and we had a little cup of coffee, and I cooked him lunch. And I felt a hell of a lot better. Funny enough, I went back to bed actually and snoozed for 3 hours. I phoned my team and they just looked after everything. But that really kind of lifted me. But now I'm like you, I'm a very half pint full kind of guy. And there's lots of other people, unfortunately, that aren't. And I do think psychologically this will finish them off. And that's what I worry about, like you, in the second lockdown. A lot of people use their savings. Or a lot of people got extra grants to buy all the PPE and the shields and all the rest of it. And that money is being burnt through. And I don't know where they're, I don't know whether they're going to be able. I think the hardest bit is a bit like you, is when you say that's enough. When you say, I can't carry on like this, or you make yourself too ill, trying to save everybody. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's how long you keep putting your money into it, and then you borrow this to cover that. And I saw it as a series of trap doors, as I said to everybody from the beginning, and every time the trap door keeps going. So during this furlough, my national insurance contribution, because I had a huge wage bill, will be something like £800 a week that I will have to find whilst closed, on top of all the other things and the leasing coffee machine and my £12,000 rationale oven, and it just goes on, in my mortgage payments. But it is the uncertainty. It's a big problem, which it was over Brexit and still is over Brexit. It's uncertainty, and I'm not in the export-import business, but it is still uncertainty. And one thing business hates is uncertainty. But I don't know, I can't be any stronger than I genuinely think people should start looking at other opinions that are out there. Dr. Mike Yeadon's a fantastic example, who worked with Patrick Vallance at Pfizer. And I'm not suggesting any conspiracy to vaccinations and all that Bill Gates stuff. That might or might not be something. I'm not bothered about that. But I certainly think there are other opinions as to how this pandemic will pan out. and that Sage and the government should start listening. I remember Winston, some sort of quote, but I can't get it accurate, where he said scientists were there to produce their information. At the end of the day, he was there to make a decision. And I think Boris has got to be strong now. In my opinion, he's lost the plot. It shouldn't have happened. As I keep saying, if I'm wrong, but I think we've got to get on with this now and shield those people who are vulnerable, protect the elderly. Possibly myself, I've got AAA, whatever that, as aneurysm, auto something, and I need to have it scanned every so often. I've got atrial fibrillation. I don't know, should I be out and about it? Yeah, of course. For me, I'm a libertarian. I will take my risk and do what I want, when I want, with my health, without compromising anybody else. John Stewart there on liberty. And what's happened as well now is that our liberties have been taken away, some of which I don't think we'll ever get back. And that does concern me greatly. Lord Shumpton at the moment writing quite clearly that we're becoming a totalitarian state if we're not careful. These laws, ex parte sims, gives us the right not to be given laws that are just so wide ranging that they tell us what we can and can't do. And I suppose I'm a bit of a rebel at heart. I always have been. I think the system's there to be tested, and at the moment the rules are just so complicated and mixed up, and people who Wales locked down but not, they can travel. Does this virus know where the border is? Does it know it's 10 o'clock at night and should perhaps sort of go home by 10 because it might, because it know it's, you know, it to me, there's so much that's not been discussed, and we live in a democracy.
It's a shame, Paul, because we've kind of run out of time. And that's the thing, whenever I've met you, I've always run out of time. I've never been able to stay long enough and have that extra drink with you. So Paul, I've got to ask you, which I ask every single person who I've had the pleasure of doing these interview Punchline Talks with, is, sir, what's your top 3 business tips?
3.
Well, I'm sure
top one right now, don't go into the hospitality business.
Okay.
No, sensibly. Enjoy what you do. I've loved everything I've done, for good or bad, or all the things that have gone right or wrong, apart from the pandemic, which I've absolutely detested. But I love what I do. I haven't enjoyed wearing a face mask to serve and talk to people around the pub. And yeah, I don't think that's. But enjoy what you do. It's fundamental. You are your staff. I think at the end of the day, you know, I've said a few times, it's like they're family to me, which is why this hurts all the much more when people start talking about redundancies and how people are going to have, what they're going to do. You know, this is people who've been in this business all their life. You know, Nick from the Bell, he's been a publican for 25 years. He's one of the best operators. Well, what's he going to do? Yeah, okay, he'll find something to do, but it's mad. So you are your staff. Oh, and 3, come on. Never give up, as in what Winston said. Never give up. If you're wrong, obviously reconsider it, but never give up. Just go for it and just keep going for it and going for it and going for it. Like with Rene, the first 3 years were hard, and then we suddenly became it, and we were the place to be. But just keep going and going and going. If you believe in what you believe in and you enjoy what you do, what's the problem with just going for it every day? And I suppose number 4 is just get up every day and be glad to be above ground.
Well, Paul, all I can say to you, sir, is look, just keep going, and don't give up. And hopefully I'll see you very soon having a pint.
I look forward to seeing you. We'll have a pint. I really look forward to reopening and having a pint.
Cheers, Paul.
Yeah. Cheers. And thanks for interviewing me.
No worries. Stay safe, mate. Bye.
Cheers, Mark.